please forgive the lighting from my blinds, but today I wanted to go through and talk about some of the books that I have read in the past 2-3 months. This isn't all of them, but they're the ones that I have on hand with me right now because a lot of them were from the library and I already gave them back. The first book that I wanted to talk about is actually a collection of short stories. It's a translation of Marina Ospina's Variations on the Body. There we go. So this is a collection of short stories all about women who are living in the same Colombian city. And a lot of it centers around different things going on with their bodies, hence why it's called Variations on the Body. But each story is very different and has a lot of different things to offer. A few of them are connected, like the first two, and I believe there are two other ones that are also connected within the narrative. They deal with things like war in the area and how that has affected both women who were involved in the warfare as well as civilian women. There's a lot on kind of beauty and the standards that come along with that, as well as different work that women do. I think each story has things you could break down into smaller components and really study, and that's both a testament to the original stories as well as the translations of them. I think word by word there are so many different techniques that are really amazing in these stories. I think you could read any of these just by themselves, but as a group together, I think it adds something. I originally read the first story online by itself, and it really added to the experience of me reading it again as part of a group and seeing how this one woman's story compares to all these other women's stories and how they're connected, and yeah, I don't know, I just liked it. The next book I wanted to talk about is This Rebel Heart. This is kind of a YA historical fantasy. It's got a lot of the Jewish experience in it as well as the queer experience. This book is about a Jewish girl in Soviet Hungary and how she is involved in the revolution that happens there, and how her Jewish identity comes into play with all of the things that are happening, and how she's constantly thinking about it, but others might be kind of pushing that to the back of their minds when they're planning this rebellion, and then not necessarily thinking about how that intersects with what's going on, as well as there's a lot of queer characters, and they're bringing that to the table in the revolution, and so it's about these kind of marginalized people coming together to be the leaders of this revolution. I will say the first half of this book is kind of slow in terms of pacing, but once I got to the second half, it really picked up and I was super engaged. So it took me quite a while to get through the first half, and then barely any time at all to get through the second half. It's kind of a lot of build up to this singular event, and so you have to take the time to kind of go through what's happening socially and how the pieces are kind of lining up in order for that first domino to fall. And then once it gets going, the whole thing kind of comes down all at once. So that's why the pacing is kind of like that. So I do forgive it for that. I did actually meet the author and I got it signed, so that was pretty cool. They were super nice. There's so much in this book up to interpretation on the reader's part as to what is fantastical and what is actually happening. There was even one part that me and a couple people went up to the author and asked, did this really happen, or is this a metaphor? And they were like, hey, I have one idea of what it is, and my publisher had another idea of what it is, so whatever you thought it was is probably just as valid as what I think it is. So that was really funny. There were such beautiful kind of metaphors for what was happening at this time in Hungary, in terms of the descriptions of the physical space and how it reflected back on what the people were feeling. So I definitely think it is a good read for anyone if you wanted to pick it up. The next book I have is a graphic novel called Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me. I really enjoyed this. I think you don't often get to see toxic relationships explored in young adult literature. I feel like you might get to see that a lot in adult fiction, and kind of the nuances of that, but kind of young love is seen as ideal, or like, even if it's not, it's like brief and just enjoy it while it happens. This really takes a look of like, hey, sometimes you're young and you're in a very toxic situation, and that's not great for you. And it leads to a lot of, crises, and you might fall out with your friends, and you might be stuck in this cycle of keep going back to this person who causes you so much pain. And so I thought that was really great to portray, especially in a queer relationship. I really enjoyed the art style as well, and as you can see, it kind of has that black and white with a single color going on, which is nice and visually aesthetically pleasing. There is some cheating in this, but I think it didn't bother me because it was used as a way to kind of show the toxicity of this relationship. It wasn't like casually just, oh, it happens and then they move on and they're not hurt by it kind of thing. It also deals with things like teen pregnancy and grooming and things like that, so there's a lot of important messages for young people getting into relationships that I think, they need to be reading about and learning about, not just when you get older. So I think that's good, that young love isn't just this idealized, put on a pedestal thing. It can be bad sometimes, and you need to know that, and you need to be able to recognize when that's happening. Next, I have another graphic novel, The Magic Fish. This is another one with just beautiful art style with that one color kind of thing. This is about a young boy who's gay and is trying to come out to his parents, but they mostly speak Vietnamese, and so he's trying to bridge the gap between them in terms of language with a language that they all speak, which is fairy tales. And so together they read these fairy tales every night, and you can tell how the characters within them are connected to the characters who are reading them. And what's interesting is it focuses a lot on the mother at first, and then as they pick up a new fairy tale, it slowly starts gravitating towards being more connected to the son, and you can kind of see her journey towards how her understanding of herself in these stories kind of leads to her understanding her son through these stories, which I thought was really clever. There was one part in the Cinderella story in here that was kind of horrifying and gruesome, as traditional old fairy tales tend to be, but I wasn't expecting it just because it hadn't really been prevalent in the rest of the book, and so it kind of was a shock when it came out to me, especially because it is a visual format, and so it was there visually instead of just in words. So it is in the Cinderella story part of this book if you want to be prepared, but it's like one page, so it wasn't that bad, but definitely would have liked a little bit of a warning on that. I have to say, I feel like the mother was definitely the character that shined the most in this book. I feel like I didn't really get a lot of the son, even though it seems like he would be the focal character of this, but that's okay. And then also like his crush and stuff like that, just kind of, that storyline just kind of ends without anything happening. Like his friend's just like, oh yeah, I know you have a crush on me, I don't have a crush on you though. And then he's like unbothered by it. I don't know, I thought he'd be more affected by learning that. So, I don't know. I enjoyed it. Lastly, I have with me here Out of the Blue, which is a fake dating story in which a non-binary mermaid has a month to go on this coming-of-age journey to help out a human for returning to the ocean and receiving their, like, magic mer powers and becoming an elder in the ocean. And they happen to stumble upon this character who has just been broken up with and wants to make his ex jealous, and make him realize what he's missing, and they'll get back together and kind of things. And so they decide to fake date as a way to fulfill this like journey of helping someone out. And along the way, they both realize that the thing that the murder person helped out with was the other character realizing that he is enough on his own. I really didn't really enjoy this book, if I'm honest. There's a lot of things, but the main thing that hit me off the bat was the writing style and the voices of the characters. It just wasn't my personal taste, but I recognize some other people might like it. There was a lot of cheating in this book, which I probably could have, if I had looked up more about it before I read, seen online, but it wasn't done in a way that I thought was helpful to the story. It was kind of like, I feel like he could have taken it out and still had the rest of the story be the same. So I didn't like it. I didn't like the way it was done. There was a lot of talk about sex. It didn't like explicitly show anything. It's one of those like fade to black kind of moments because it is YA and not adult. But I feel like it was more explicit than adult romances I've read where they do actually show the sex scenes. Like the way they talk about it afterwards. So it's like a fade to black, but then they keep bringing it up again, and just the language that they use of like, oh, that's so, I don't know, it's just like, ugh, just the words that they use felt more explicit than actual sex scenes that I've read. As well as I feel like a lot of their like motivation and drive for things was just sex-based. And then, I don't know, I feel like they talked so much about the mermaid world and like life in the ocean, how great it was and how much they wanted to go back to it. But I feel like we didn't really get to understand it at all or see any of it or get it described very well. I feel like I had no understanding of this world that was supposedly so important. So it just wasn't a book that I really enjoyed, which is sad because I love mermaids and I was really excited for it. So maybe I got my hopes up a little too high just because I enjoy the subject matter. But yeah, those are some of the books I've read recently. There are some others that I read, and I'm picking up some more today, so let me know if you want to see more videos like this.